As for his background, Ramana grew up in Jamshedpur in India, in a musical environment. His mother is a Carnatic vocalist, and his brother Mani is a sitar player. Ramana grew up around tabla players from Banaras, the most famous one being Arvind Kumar Azad, Pandit Arvind Kumar Azad. That's where his passion for tabla and for the Banaras Gharana actually started. His interest in fixing the tabla actually started because of a necessity, because in Jamshedpur there weren't any resources to fix tablas. Later on, he honed his skills in the gullies of Banaras, where he hung around with other tabla players and he saw them how they fix their tablas. Ramana moved to Boston in 1997. He's an IT professional, but his passion is tabla and his love is music. He started with helping Sandeep Das and other tabla professionals in the area who were not happy with how their tabla sounded. Once he started fixing their tablas, then people came to him and asked him to help out with their own tablas. And now his workshop is now developed into a store, Radha Rhythms. With this, I hand over the mic to my friend and my brother, Ramana. There you go, Ramana.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to mute my phone. I just want to do one more sound check if you guys don't. I'm going to mute my phone and just focus on the laptop audio. And can you tell me if you can hear the sound properly? Any one of you? Good. Thank you.
Yes.
So first off, great thanks to my two elder brothers there, Sanjay Jain and Ravi ji. I met LearnQuest through Ravi ji and instantly fell in love because the owner of LearnQuest, Pradeep ji, and all the volunteers like Sanjay ji and Ravi ji shared similar passions as me. They have the passion towards music and they're working very selflessly to promote music in this area. So it was but natural that with the like mindsets, we decided to collaborate. So we come from a very rich culture of handcrafted instruments. The world has tried to automate them. The most famous being in Germany, they tried to automate the making of the tabla pudi. And they failed. They failed miserably.
Ramana, if you can hear me, there is a lot of echo. I think both your iPhone and computer sound audio is on. If you can mute one of them, then it will probably be okay.
I'm not getting any echo. Is anybody else getting any echo?
Is the echo gone now?
Yeah, echo is gone.
Yes, Ramana, echo is gone. If you can look at the phone instead of looking at your laptop, that would be good when you're talking. Echo is gone now.
Yeah, echo is gone.
Good. Now I'm hearing sound from my computer, so I should be good now.
But when you talk, please look at the phone, not at the laptop.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that, Sanjay. So when I came into this country, a little bit about me, I was not focused on tabla at all. I was focused on a career. And I'm an IT professional by career. And as Raviji mentioned, the artists started coming in, and therein was the genesis of this store as it stands today. But enough about me, and let's go to the tabla. So I have tried to assemble a few parts of the tabla for all of you to see. And we'll start with the right hand drum, which is called the dahina in Hindi. Dahina means the right hand. And the right hand drum is called the dahina. There is various selections of wood. Now, my aim is to demystify and to help you guys make right choices when buying tablas, when also playing tablas, so that you guys make an informed judgment call, and then on the maintenance of the tabla. So these are examples of wood. These are two very distinct woods. Primarily the wood that was used to make tabla back in the day was, we had in India wooden fireplaces and cooking was through wooden stoves. So the logs that used to come in used to be the logs that were used for cooking. The first tablas that were made, wood was not sourced for the tabla. They would choose a log that was of a uniform diameter, and they felt that a tabla could be made from that, or a dholak could be made from that, or a pakhavaj could be made from that, and they would craft it from that. From there on, our sound engineers who had no degree in sound started experimenting with various woods. Two very famous woods come to mind. One is bijasar and one is rosewood or shisham. Shisham is only one. The natural color of shisham is dark and it is slightly black in color with the grain of wood. The sound of shisham, when you play the na on the chati, when I say the na on the chati, this is the chati. When you play the sound of na on the chati, it sounds like glass is breaking. So for performance-oriented music, musicians started preferring the shisham wood or the rosewood. So if you look at a graph of the sound, there is a very sharp peak. And that peak came from shisham. The other wood that was used was called bijasar. Bijasar did not have the sharp peak, it had a rounded sound effect. It had a very rounded sound effect, so the sound was very sweet. Larger diameter tablas were preferred to be made in bijasar because those tablas which give you the pakhavat sound of a pakhavat type of sound, bijasar was preferred because it was very sweet. Bijasar also has a particular characteristic of releasing haldi-like, turmeric-like yellow color onto the syahi itself, because it would leach its yellow color on. It was considered very auspicious also, bijasar. Ultimately, rosewood was harvested to a very great extent, and certain controls began to be imposed by the government of India on the harvesting of rosewood. Then different other woods came into vogue, the most famous being from the Amroha region. In Maharashtra, in Amroha, we have a forest in Amroha where wood is very readily available. The wood has a reddish hue that came to be known as lal shisham. The sound of the tabla was very good in that. So today when you go to the market, you will see lal shisham and kala shisham. This is due to our culture. There is actually no rosewood which is actually called lal shisham. It's a generic wood. You want the density of wood to be high. You don't want it to be very low. And you want the tabla wood to be dried. What happens if it is not dried? Under pressure of this skin, which is under very high pressure, this head will deform. You will start seeing cracks on the tabla. So before a tabla maker makes a tabla, he seasons his wood, indoor, not outdoors. He seasons it for about 6 months or so, and then he crafts the tabla. In the absence of which, if you give me a second, I'll show you a head that is deformed. This is a head, as you can see, that is deformed. What does deform mean? When you measure the diameter here and when you measure the diameter here, they are two different diameters. One is larger, one is smaller. Okay. And I spoke about rosewood. For those of you interested in what rosewood looks like, it looks like this. The tabla color can never be gauged from the outside because we polish the outside. But wood should always have a grain like you see here. This is sapwood, and you will always see a grain on wood. You can see the grain on this wood, even though this has been polished. This is rosewood. When you look on the inside of this, and when you look on the inside of this, you will see two different colors. I hope you can see. A much darker color inside on this one.
Ramana, point towards your phone and not towards the laptop.
Yeah. If folks can see, this is much darker on the inside. This is rosewood. And when you see this, it's lighter on the inside. Now you can also see this. It's painted black, but this is not rosewood. It's very heavy. It's heavier than rosewood. It's painted black, but when you look at the inside, it's a very light color. What you want to select for us today with microphones and the technology, the wood really doesn't matter. You can choose red shisham. You don't need to spend a lot of money going in for rosewood or for bijasar and for all of these, because the microphones compensate for the sound, and the sound difference is very minimal between regular tablas and the other tablas. The other thing in the wood is the way in which the tabla is actually carved. If you can see inside, and I'll try to get a flashlight so that you can see it. If you can see inside, this is very plain, hollowed out completely by the lathe machine. This one is hand carved on the inside. Little rougher, and you'll see certain things inside. And this is a hand carved wood. My personal preference is the hand carved wood because it brings out certain highs that are absent in this. But the main thing in the tabla is what we call the pudi, which is this, the head of the tabla. This is responsible for your sound regardless of which shell you have and how the makers make it. Made with goat leather, a lot of effort goes into making this pudi. And the best effort goes into making this syahi. This is called the gajara of a pudi, this pattern that you see. And अगर मैं 1 मिनट हिंदी में शिफ्ट करूं, अगर हमारी ऑडियंस को समझ में आती है, ठेठ भाषा में इसको बोलते हैं पुड़ी को मढ़ना। जब पुड़ी को हम लोग मढ़ते हैं, तो पुराने जमाने में जब पुड़ी को मढ़ते थे, तो पुड़ी को मढ़ने वाला यानी कि जो लेदर को लेके सीजन करता है, उसको भिंगाता है, उसके बाद ये गजरा बनाता है, उसको 2 रुपए मिलते थे। और जो स्याही बनाता है, इसके लिए 15 रुपए मिलते थे। So you can see the difference between, even though this is extremely hard work, making the gajra, and a certain degree of strength and skill is needed to make the gajra, the engineering of the tabla is limited to this little black circle that you see. What is this black circle made of? Other than Calcutta, it is made out of glue, which is made from maida, which is called lehi, and very finely like talcum powder, like baby powder, like iron ore or iron particles. Those two are mixed in a fixed ratio, and that is how this is made. And the entire sound of the tabla comes from this. A lot of skill and technique goes into making this particular one. Now, this is made out of layers. In each layer, the ratio of the lehi to the iron ore varies. In the bottom layers, the lehi is more, which helps this powder adhere to the tabla skin. In the top layers, the lehi is less. But what that does is, it brings about the sound of tabla. This is a tabla which is being used by my son. This is about 8 years old. And the sound is very crisp and clear. You can hear the sustain. People are very desirous of the sustain. And this is a more modern pudi, and you will not get the sustain. So examples of a well-made skin and examples of a very poorly made skin in my hand here. Now there are 3 sounds to the tabla. This is called the Maidan. The sound here and here should match. In other words, I'm assuming all of you play the tabla. When you play the na on the chati and when you play the na on the thap, the sound should be similar. What happens when they are not similar? You are accompanying sitar. This is in D. This is in C sharp. It throws the sitar player off. And this sound should be in Rishabh. Rishabh means in the re. So if this is sa, this should be re. That will define a well-made skin for you. And I'm emphasizing this because you have makers, when you go in as a beginner to buy a tabla, you hear the tabla, you say the sustain is very good. But if this sound and this sound do not match, or this is not in the Rishabh, your tabla is not going to be useful for any concert. And you will train yourself on hearing the wrong sounds, which means that then in the future, you cannot tune your tabla properly because your ear is not hearing the right sounds. I'll take a brief pause here. Any questions that the audience has for me thus far? You can raise your hands and Sanjay ji will admit you in if the audience has any questions.
Somebody has a question. Are you located in Stoughton?
I am located in Stoughton. Okay. Moving on. So the head is mounted on this way and then is strung up by something called wadi or leather straps, which look like this. There is a certain thickness or diameter for the wadi, which is different from the tabla and the baya. What is important for the wadi is a certain degree of malleability and flexibility. When this becomes very rigid, at that time, you don't want to use that wadi. It needs to have a certain degree of flexibility. Today, different makers come in with different other materials such as nylon to strap the tabla. I would recommend against using nylon to strap your tabla because A, it doesn't hold the pitch where it is. It doesn't hold the gattas where it is, where it's supposed to, because there's a certain amount of slippage involved. And B, when you're tuning the tabla, if you hit on one spot, the other spot goes out of tune. Won't dwell much between nylon and wadi. It's better to go puristic and have wadi to make your tabla. Okay. The thick wadi goes onto the tabla and the thinner wadi goes onto the baya. Why? Because it's easier to stretch the thinner wadi. The baya has a much wider diameter. If you look at this, it's a much wider diameter. And when we stretch it, we use a horse's strength to stretch this. It's very easy to stretch the skin over a smaller diameter as opposed to this. So a thinner one is used for this, and the thinner one keeps this in tune also. The baya is the male and the tabla is the female is a way of looking at it. In other words, बायां को गरजना चाहिए और तबला में निखास है, मिठास है. So when you hit the baya, it should have a low sound, much like a lion's roar. You can go slightly higher. This is my son's baya. He plays the Banaras style. They play very loose, so which is why you see this is a very low tune baya. If you're more the Zakir Hussain School of Music, you'll play a much higher baya. I hope you can hear the difference in the sounds between the pitches of them. However, all artists prefer a low baya because it's very easy to modulate a low baya. And when you modulate a low baya, the sound that is produced by the baya is very beautiful. Speaking of modulation on the baya and playing of the tabla, there is one thing which is very important. On the tabla, what is important is the bounce of your finger. So this has to have a certain amount of give. If this doesn't have a certain amount of give, your finger is not going to bounce properly. Similarly, in the baya, the way we modulate the baya is going to be by applying pressure from this portion. So this has to have a certain amount of give to be able to modulate this.
Ramanaji, Harshal has a question.
Yes. Give me 1 second. My battery is running low. I just want to get the laptop charger and put it in, plug it in.
Yep.
Harshal, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I am able to.
Yeah, so let him come back. We can ask the question.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I didn't want to.
Sanjay, he's been muted again.
No, he's muted himself.
Achha.
Sorry, is Ramanaji located in Stoughton, Mass?
Yes.
Okay. Could you share the address later?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I joined late, so maybe this has already been
Sanjay,
talked
I'm
about.
not able to see myself on the phone. If you can hear me.
I have shared Ramana's phone number here with everybody. If you need to reach him, you can reach him and he can.
We can
set up
see
a
you,
time with
Ramana.
him.
Yeah.
Thank you, Raviji.
I will ask for the meeting ID once again, if you don't mind, Raviji.
Yes, meeting ID is 898-8881-9799.
And the passcode is?
467096. . You're connected.
So Ramanaji, Harshal has a question. Is there an ideal pitch for Dagga Baya for a specific tabla? We can't hear you, Ramana.
There is none. And I've seen this mistake being made by a lot of people. I typically, when someone walks into the store, I don't argue with them. So people come in and tell me, even junior artists make this mistake. They tell me, the tabla is sounding in C sharp. I want to tune my baya also to C sharp. You don't want to do that. Your baya has to be at a low pitch, and that's it. The only tuning that matters is the tuning to a particular frequency for your tabla, not for the baya. Harshal, does that answer you?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Let's look at now maintenance of the tabla itself. When you pull and you're putting it under full pressure, which means that your pegs are down, other than when you buy it brand new, let's say from me, okay? If you're buying from India, if you're buying from the other places, by the time it comes to you, the pitch is already lowered, okay? Otherwise, if you're taking it from me, it's tuned to its fullest capacity and you get it and the pegs are already on top, only on one wadi or one strap, okay? That time you can't do much. But once you start playing your tabla, one of the most important things to do is to tune your tabla and to keep tuning your tabla every time. Now you've finished it's 5 o'clock in the evening, your office is completed, or your school and your homework are completed, and you played for an hour or two, you finished your riyaj, you're going to store your tabla. What you want to do is bring these gattas or dowels slightly up, not all the way up, which means that some of the pressure on this head is released. These heads are very sensitive to atmospheric changes and respond to the temperature changes around us. One of the things that I get for repair is a lot of people with cracked heads. That's because while storing the tablas, they have not brought the pressure down on the head. So when storing your tabla, you always want to bring it slightly up, not all the way up, very slightly up. Retune your tabla. This is important. Retune your tabla after you bring it up and then store it. The baya doesn't crack that much. It's a much wider head, takes pressure well. But in the winter season, you will notice that your baya goes high. And in the summer, it becomes low. The best way to keep it in tune is to play. The more that, and I cannot emphasize this enough, your instruments, the more they are played, the more they will remain in tune. The more sweat hits these instruments, the more malleable and supple your leather will be. It's very important for you to play your instrument. If you are planning on long-term storage, I want to store this for 6 months to a year and I'm not going to play this, it's better to store it in a fiberglass case. In a regular case, you don't need to put your tablas inside a bag, inside a fiberglass case or anything. You want to use the cover that is supplied by the manufacturer, put the cover on and put a piece of cloth, a dari, a chaddar on top of the tabla and the maya, and that is sufficient. But it's very important to bring the pressure on this head down when you're storing your tabla. Otherwise, your tabla is prone to cracking. Especially during the heat of summer, the tablas crack even during winter, responding to atmospheric changes. They don't take these changes very well. So reduce this slightly and then tune it again, and then you store your tabla. Any questions on that? Okay. Moving on, how do you tune your tabla? will explain. I'm going to take a tabla, bring it out of tune, and put it back in tune. This where the sound is good and do it with this. All of you have a hammer in the house which is supplied with your tabla, not this heavy hammer, but that hammer will look more like this. And this is a very heavy hammer. You'll notice that this has a hook here. And this is by design, this is my son's hammer. The reason this has a hook here and is not flat on this bottom is he plays the Banaras Baya, which is made out of ropes and not out of leather wadi. Let me show you how that looks. This is how a Banaras Baya looks like. So you see, instead of wadi, you have ropes. And you will see certain rings on this which are used for tuning. One of the rings is here, one of the rings is here. I hope you guys can see these rings. And this hook is used to move the rings up and down, which is why his hammer is made out of hooks. Speaking of hammers, the heaviest hammer you can buy is the best hammer that you can use. Why? When using the hammer, you are hitting the dowels and you are hitting the gajra. With a light hammer, you have to use a lot of force to hit this. First one is holding the hammer. Never hold the hammer at the end when tuning your tabla. This gives you less control unless you want to give a very heavy stroke. When you're tuning the tabla and you're beginning, hold your hammer more like this, because this gives you more control. I see a lot of tablas coming to me for repair, and when they're coming, they're cracked here, they're cracked here. What happened is the hammer landed in the wrong spot and destroyed the pudi. One stroke will destroy your pudi. And very unlikely for you to recover, you have to buy a new pudi at that particular point of time. So you want to hit the gajra, you don't want to hit the skin here. And if I put it on this side, the hammer, you'll see. You want to hit it here, you don't want to hit it here. With the heavier hammer, a small stroke will give a greater force. With a light hammer, you have to go like this. So spend the $10 or $20 extra and buy a heavy hammer for tuning, because it will make your life much easier. You have to tune your tabla every time you play. This is something that is used every day. So my suggestion would be not to skimp, but to buy the heaviest hammer possible. This hammer is about 600 grams, which is very heavy. The lighter hammers come in around 150 to 200 grams. So there's a big difference in how you hit. As makers, we use a much heavier hammer. We use this. And I'm comfortable tuning with this. So let me take this tabla out of tune.
Ramana, there is a question from Sambasiva Rao Pemaraju.
Yes.
Do you recommend nuts and bolts instead of wadi for daya? Does it make easier? Does it make it easier? Sorry. Let me complete the question. Does it make it easier to tune in winter, especially in Boston? Pros and cons. Thanks.
Yeah. Obviously, a nut and bolt tabla is very easy to tune because you're taking a wrench and tuning it instead of using the hammer to tune it. Most players get so used to tuning their tabla. It doesn't matter what season it is, when it is, few strokes of the hammer and you've tuned your tabla. So you really don't need a nut and bolt for that. You guys need to be comfortable as players with the ability to tune the tabla at will. And that needs practice. That means every day you're tuning your tabla before you play and after you play. Before your riyaj, you're tuning it to make sure it is good. After riyaj, you're tuning it to make sure it is good. Now, why do I not recommend the nut and bolt tabla? Any metal accessories that are put here produce a secondary sound, which is why you do not see artists who travel from, say, India to Boston to Europe under different weather conditions traveling with a nut and bolt tabla. The sound is not puristic. If it was so simple, the artists all would just opt for a nut and bolt tabla. Where is the nut and bolt tabla useful? It is very useful for qawwali type situations. Because in a qawwali, you have a cacophony. In that, different sounds are mixed in. And the loudness and a high pitch. Qawwali typically is F and above. So your scales go from A to G. In qawwali, you're playing E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp. These tablas you're playing. The sound is loud. It's a more open-handed rather than a closed-handed way of playing there. A lot of times in qawwali, you'll see the guy playing a dholak dahina and tabla baya, or vice versa, a tabla dahina and a dholak baya. The sound is not very puristic. Those are use cases in such high pitches with the difficulty to tune and hit with the hammer. The nut and bolt tabla makes sense. That's a unique use case, a qawwali, where you can use a nut tabla. Otherwise, it's not recommended at all, the nut and bolt tabla. Manufacturers come up with a lot of gimmicks to increase their sales, is what I would say. Stick with the puristic version of the tabla. Once you mastered the tabla, you can go for different options and experiment with them if you have money to throw around. Otherwise, stick with the very pure version of the tabla and don't dilute this. That's a recommendation again. Any further follow-ups to that question? Okay. Now I've detuned this tabla, and the most important thing in tuning a tabla is not the meter, it's your ear. You can hear that this tabla is not in tune at this time. So what is the audience hearing when I say this tabla is not in tune? Can somebody volunteer to tell me what they're hearing from this tabla? The sustain is still good. So one side is high, one side is low. Can you guys hear that? I'll play it again, just so that you hear what I'm talking about. For those who are facing a difficulty following the sound while tuning, vocalize the sound. It makes life a lot easier. If you can vocalize the sound, you'll start hearing it better. When you vocalize the sound, you will hear that the sound is at different frequencies. Don't hold the hammer yet. When you're tuning your tabla, first listen to your tabla all around. So this is high. This is low. Pardon me for looking at the laptop when I'm tuning this, because it just makes life a lot easier as I'm facing this. Low, high. This is the house in the middle. Coming to a very important concept. What is a house in a tabla? How many houses in a tabla? You have 8 houses in a tabla. Each house has 4 straps. So when you see this going up and down, you'll see 8 into 4, 32 of these straps on the tabla. A very fixed count. Now imagine on the tabla, between these 2 straps, as you count this 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. So exactly 3 holes are left, and in the 4th house, this wadi goes in. Exactly 3 houses, 3 holes, and in the 4th hole, the wadi goes in. So when somebody is making the gajara, he has to take care of putting a precise number of holes in this. It's a very exact science. The number of holes here that you see are not arbitrary, they're very exact. So what is the house? Tabla has knots. You can see this is the last knot, this is the first knot. Based on non-Calcutta style. When we put this wadi on, we go clockwise from right to left and put this wadi on. Calcutta, this becomes the first knot, this becomes the last knot. They go anti-clockwise, left to right. Okay. So this, for the most cases, is my first knot. In order to tune this and to hold this, you will see this going from the top, down, comes down from below, again goes up, comes down from below. These 4 make a house. So if you count from the beginning, 4 straps make a house. Okay. Your gatta, rule of thumb, goes into the 2nd strap. In other words, on this tabla, you see the knots. This is the first strap, which is going above. The gatta goes into the first strap, which is coming from under. So if you look at the ones where the gatta is not there, you'll better understand above and under. Why do we put it under the one that is under? When you put it on the one that is above, you can. No harm in putting it in any one of these 4 straps. But when you put it in the one that is above, you won't get sufficient tension. So when you pull up the one that is below, the amount of tension that you put on the head is greater. Then this is the second one you put in. This is the third one you put in. And this is the final one that you put in. That's the order of mounting these gattas. Okay. So each house has to be tuned. Concept of houses, do you guys understand? So again, high, low, and one house in the middle. When you notice this, you don't want to start tuning the house in the middle. The house in the middle will be distorted because there are different frequencies on either side of it. You either want to adjust this frequency or you want to adjust this frequency. If I put it this way, you either want to adjust this frequency or this frequency. You don't want to tune this. After these 2 match, if there is a distortion in this, you will tune this. A lot of times, tablas are so out of tune that when you have 2 distinct frequencies on either side, this one will sound flat. And people go crazy trying to tune the one in the middle. You don't want to tune the one in the middle. You want to tune this and you want to tune this. So how do you tune this? You can either high, low. You can either bring the high one low, or you can bring the low one high. And you want to select the highest frequency in the tabla. So I'm going to play the houses generally. So this is the highest point in the tabla. So I can match my lowest one to the highest one, or I select the lowest one and match everything else there. The difference is you're either hitting up or you're hitting down. You have two choices to hit. You can hit on the gatta or the dowel here, or you can hit here. For this demo, I'm going to hit here and show you how to tune this. Okay. So I'm going to take this and try to match this. I'm not going to hit this anymore because I've seen that with 2 strokes, it's not going any higher. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to hit the other way and I'm going to bring this down. Almost in tune, very microscopic difference. Can you see the highs and lows now? Very small differences there. So I took a tabla out of tune, and just by tuning 2 houses, I could tune the whole tabla. How? Because when you divide a tabla into half, opposite sides will have the same frequency. So this and this are going to have the same frequency. So by tuning 1/2, you're tuning the whole tabla. You have 8 houses. So half a tabla means just 4 houses. So when you take a well-made pudi and you tune 4 houses, your tabla is tuned. No need to take the hammer and hit every house. After this, you can use a meter and tune your tabla. We use different meters, ones that are coming in as apps, the other ones I can show you. This is a Korg meter that I use both for the harmonium and the tabla. Very handy for me. Has a metronome as well. And we use either this one or we use the phone meter for the final tuning. Any questions that you guys have on the tuning of the tabla? The baya gets tuned to a large extent. When a baya is pulled uniformly, it gets tuned by itself. When you hit in the middle, the baya gets tuned by itself. There is no need to tune your baya every time you play. If 1 or 2 houses are very much out of whack, you can use the hammer and bring them back in tune. But the baya you're not tuning on a daily basis. The tabla is what you're tuning on a daily basis. So to recap, you're going to tune your tabla, you're going to play your tabla, you are going to reduce the impact on the head by bringing these dowels slightly up so that the pressure on the tabla decreases. Store them, cover them with a blanket, and your tabla is safe and sound. Any questions, anything else that anybody is desirous of knowing? Any questions from the group? Raviji, over to you.
I think it went really well. So I think it was a good overall overall lecture demonstration, just so that we understood what you were doing and how you showed the tabla. There was one question that I had. One of the things that you had shown me is the use of lead in the tabla for balancing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Let me bring about some bad shells for you and some good shells for you. So,
Yes.
and there was a question in the group. I'll answer it. This is on the baya. Both are copper bayas. Both are very expensive bayas. This belongs to an artist, will not take his name. You can see it's very well used and it's copper inside. This is one of the bayas that I first made for my elder son, so I'm keeping it without selling it, just out of memory. But very handy to have. This is also copper. When you look from the outside, this looks like steel because it's been nickel plated. Why do people nickel plate the baya? You see the copper or brass or steel, three things that are used to make the baya. When you have copper or brass, this develops a patina. Some people like the patina. Some people think that the patina is making this look very ugly. They want a newer look. They want the baya to look like this for posterity, the shine of copper. Which is why, instead of keeping it as copper, they nickel plate the baya. So from outside, it looks like steel. In reality, it is copper. The weight of these two is almost similar, but big difference. When a baya is made out of a very thin gauge metal, when you play the baya, the metal starts vibrating and gives you a secondary sound which is not desired. So you want bayas to be of a slightly thicker gauge material. You cannot gauge the thickness of a baya when you buy it because it's covered with a shell. You can't see how thick the baya is. Though by hitting it, people like me can tell whether it's thick or thin. However, very big difference between these two. Do you see the thickness of this ring and the thickness of this ring? If you go to my Instagram page, #Radha Rhythms, you'll see I've posted videos of how bayas are made, cut, welded, put together. Okay. However, the metal, if you leave it like this, it becomes a very sharp edge. You can't put a pudi on this. It'll cut the pudi. So the metal has to be rolled in at this edge. in order to roll the metal in, you can't see it, but there is a steel ring inside, not stainless steel, steel ring inside this. In India, these are sold not by how good each one looks, but by weight. This is sold by the weight of copper and an extra is charged for the nickel plating. This is sold purely by the weight of copper. Inside, you can have different metals. It's like when you go to a jewelry store, the best analogy. If you go to a jewelry store, you're picking up a necklace in India and you say, I want this necklace because this looks very good. The gemstones themselves do not have any value, but when you buy a pure gold necklace with very few joints, that is the best bang for your buck that you get. Because when you go to sell the necklace back after melting it, because of the lack of joints, impurities in the gold are less, so the resale value of that necklace is more. When you buy a necklace studded with artificial stones, they still put it on the scale, weigh it, and charge you the price of gold. This is how metals are sold there. They don't care that there is steel inside, a steel ring inside. The way this, they say, 3 kilo bhaiya, 1 kilo ka 1200, 3 kilo ka kitna ho gaya, 3600 ho gaya. So this is how these are sold. So in order to make greater amount of money, and this mostly happens around the Calcutta region, the ring that they put in inside is steel. It's not copper. They put a very thick ring outside. And when they put a thick ring outside, what this becomes is top heavy. When this becomes top heavy, what is your problem? The problem is you're modulating your baya. And when you're putting pressure here on a top heavy baya, your baya tends to topple. And you're very frustrated. You come to me, bhaiya, ye rings अच्छे rings नहीं है. हमको ऐसा दो जिसमें बायां नहीं हिलेगा. भाई तुम्हारा बायां ही खराब है, रिंग्स उसको ठीक नहीं करेगा. Because this has become top heavy, this is very prone to toppling. And you can't modulate it there. When you have a thinner ring here on the top, it's very stable because the baya has to be bottom heavy. So what we use to fix these ones which the customer brings is either steel. This is steel. This is not lead. A mold made out of steel. Or I also manufacture lead molds in the shop. We put this here. Now this won't topple anymore. And we generally, when we put it, we make sure that this becomes bottom heavy instead of top heavy. So when I'm customizing something, my preference is to use lead because I don't have a steel furnace in the house. I have a lead furnace in the house. So I use lead and put enough weight on the bottom. Is lead dangerous for human beings? It is. Do I advocate that you guys touch it or inhale the fumes? I don't. However, the lead is covered by this. As a consumer, you're never in touch for the lead. People have used these for time unknown with zero health issues. However, if something has lead, we advertise that it has lead in it, and we let the consumer make a decision on whether they want to buy it or not. But for the most part, I get these, which are pre-made ones, which are made of steel. No known health hazards. This being US, we need to be a little more careful. So we use these steel ones to balance the weight on these so that your baya is not rocking. It's more stable. And then you won't have the problem of rings and other things when you're playing the baya. I see that Nitin has asked a couple of questions.
Yeah, Nitin says, would you lower the pitch by half like C sharp tabla stores at C?
Yes, that is a good idea to lower the pitch by half a scale.
And somebody says, would you do a similar talk on dholak? We'll have to explore that.
I can do it. A dholak doesn't have much engineering. I can cover it in 5 minutes if you have 5 minutes right now. Tabla is unique that the making of a tabla, the making of the syahi, the making of the gajra, there are so many factors in this that go into this. The tabla making is very unique. Dholak is a straight piece of wood. I'm oversimplifying this, but in reality, it is what it is. A dholak is a long piece of wood. You can opt to have either a nut and bolt tuned dholak or a rope dholak or a combination thereof. What do professionals prefer? They prefer a rope on the dahina side and they prefer nut and bolt on this side. Okay. This is just a hollow piece of wood that is carved out to a 1/2 inch diameter. How is the dholak skin made? The same leather that is used to make a tabla is taken. You take pieces of bamboo, you wet them so that they are flexible. You stretch the bamboo and you stretch the skin over the bamboo, and the result is this head. It's a very simple construction. No glue, no syahi, nothing. What makes a dholak sound good? The flexibility plus the way that the leather is worked upon makes this a good or a bad dholak. Similarly, on the baya side, the head is made the same way. This is very loose, so you don't see any sound. But the frequent complaint on what do dholaks repair come in for? They say my dahina is not making any sound. And when you say that the dahina is not making any sound, let me show you. You see this? There is dholak masala on the inside of this. Not on the outside, but on the inside of this. That dholak masala is made out of things that you don't want to know about. Burnt tires, and I'm not exaggerating. Burnt tires, and everybody has their own secret recipe for making this without spending any money. Dholak masala. They make this, and what we use is either mustard oil or castor oil. When we take the dholak masala and put in a fixed amount of that oil that adheres to the skin. When you're applying the masala, you want to make sure that one side of the masala is not too heavy and one side is too light. How do you see that? When you're applying the masala, put it up against the light from the other side and you can see where it is less and where it is more. It's an approximation. The more you work on it, the better your hand becomes. You spread the masala in a circle and you put this back and you're back in business. It's very, very, very simple technology. What makes the dholak sound good is the quality of the wood. If your wood is of a nice, dense, heavy structure, the sound of your dholak will be very good. If the leather that is used to make it is very good, the baya, usually in percussion music, the baya plays a very important role because when you modulate the baya, that is where the melody comes in from. The baya has a bigger role than the dahina in the quality of music that is produced. In order to be able to modulate this, the skin should not be very thin. In India, dholaks are sold from 500 rupees to 10,000 or 12,000 rupees. What is the difference? The difference in materials used for construction. You can take, wood that is made from sawdust and make a dholak. It won't sound very good. When the wood has a certain density to it, when the skin is not paper thin, but is of a particular thickness associated with it, the syahi masala is applied properly on the inside of it. It starts to sound, the resound, the sustain, and the overall sound comes in very rounded, and that is the sound that people desire. On the opposite side, you want similar things, but you want the highs to be true highs. But there's not much to a dholak, in my opinion. Working on tablas, a dholak is something that my 14-year-old son can very easily make.
Mhm.
It's a very simple technology. The price of that you pay for the dholak is really dependent on the material that you use for it. I'll show you a cheap dholak. Here the prices are different from India because of the courier charges. But this is something that we sell for $80. The wood is thinner. The pudis are still good. They are thick pudis because we try to maintain a semblance of quality. Just to make affordability, we keep this. But this, the wood is very thin. So the sound that you get from a professional dholak, you won't get here. You'll also notice that these ropes are thin. In a professional dholak, the rope, if I have one, I'll show you, is much thicker, and I'll put it side by side. So that you can see the difference. I have some rope here. This is used to make a Banaras Baya. The dholak rope is even thicker than this. And you can see the difference in the thickness of the ropes when I put it side by side.
Mhm.
The dholak rope, which professionals use, is much thicker than this.
Mhm.
Now, if you're unable to tune, because pulling of the dholak needs a special technique, the knots are special in a dholak when you tie the knots. In Banarasi language, we call it, it's an Urdu term, majamma. In the end, majamma karte hain dholak ka knot ke liye. So that's a special technique. So if you are struggling with the knots on this and you want to convert it into a nut and bolt dholak, you can convert it, take a dholak, convert it into a nut and bolt dholak. It becomes easy because all you need is a wrench to make it high or to make it low.
Mhm.
Any questions? Pakhavaj is similar to a tabla, not to the dholak.
Mhm. Ramana, this was very helpful, and it was what an excellent lecture demonstration. I think everybody got a much better understanding of the tabla. I think we have some requests for a recorded session, actually copies of the recorded session as well. So Sanjay, I think you've recorded this. So this is excellent. Also, you will see in the chat, there is a link for the Music Academy Festival. So we'd like for you folks also who are interested to actually go there, come to the festival. That's where you will see people playing the tabla, not so much tuning it. They'll be depending on Ramana to do some of that stuff for them. But no, it's a festival that we take a lot of pride in. It's 15 years that we've been doing it. We'd love to see all of you there. And with that, I thank Ramana for your time.
I just want to make a couple of questions, Raviji.
I'll just make one comment.
Yeah.
Next Sunday, we have Ramana coming again for a similar lecture demonstration. That is going to be on the harmonium. But go ahead, Ramana. What were you saying?
Yeah. Number one is feedback. Your feedback is very important because we are giving our time to you to improve the quality of music and to improve the quality of learning in this area in Massachusetts and in the US. So when you tell me you would like me to cover these topics, I can cover them better in my succeeding sessions, and it makes for a better thing. The second thing is to support institutions like LearnQuest. Right? We volunteer our time there for a particular reason. It's not because we have a lot of time on our hands, but they're spreading the love of music through LearnQuest, right? You'll see dozens of volunteers like Ravi ji, like Sanjay ji, like myself, devoting time to them in a very unselfish manner, not expecting anything in return. How can you support LearnQuest when you want to learn music? Join LearnQuest. They are increasing the number of centers in their area so that they cover the geographic boundaries very well. They're improving the quality of the teachers by hiring new musicians whom they've interviewed and they've spoken with. Lastly, the Spring Festival. Buy your tickets and attend the Spring Festival. When you're a musician, it's very important for you to develop a sense of hearing. What you hear is what you vocalize, and what you vocalize is what you play, not the other way around. So it is very important to get a good exposure to different musicians, and in doing so, supporting your community. The best way you can do that is by going to the LearnQuest sponsored programs, buying the tickets and helping them. Because the money goes into events like this, which help spread the love of music and the passion of music through the community. Thank you all very much.
Well said. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ramana.
Sanjay, I think other people want to talk. I think they're muted. So
They are muted. No, people can unmute themselves and talk. Anybody wants to talk, just raise your hand. And otherwise,
Jyotiji, you can unmute yourself. I think you've muted yourself. I think she's having trouble unmuting herself.
Jyoti Sharma?
Anji.
No, she's unmuted. She can talk.
Okay.
Could be the microphone level is a problem in her thing. Or she can type in chat and we can,
Right.
she's unmuted is what she writes. And if there's something, you can also type it in chat if you're not able to hear your voice.
Also, while she's trying to do that, I can see Jerry's here. Jerry, it's nice to see you here. Jerry's going to be playing next week with Sri George Ruckert at Northeastern. And that's our next lecture demonstration. Jerry's an excellent percussionist. He's used to be with Berkeley, but Jerry, you're very close to where Ramana is. Ramana is based out of Stoughton. So it's great to actually have you here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for arriving late, but I'm looking forward to watching the recording to get some more hints on this marvelous art of tabla and how to continue maintaining the drums. So
Yep.
I'm looking forward to playing with George. We are long, loving colleagues from many years, and it'll be a wonderful event. So thank you for the invitation.
Yep. I look forward to seeing you. It's been a few years. Okay. With that, thanks so much again. And Ramana, I'll see you again next week.
Yeah, there's a request to share info on the harmonium session as I'm reading the messages. And I'm pretty positive that Sanjay ji and Ravi ji will share that information with all of you very soon.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Sure.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Sanjay.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.